Oh,
What has
okay.
Mary
Moving
seen?
on. Richard Ramirez. We all know
Oh,
him as
this guy.
the Night
Oh,
Stalker. He's on Netflix. He has a very it's very good, but it's kind of like it's in my opinion it's more of a glorification of the crimes, and it's a retro throwback to the 80s. It's okay, but it talks about the two detectives that really wanted to take him down. I
yeah.
especially love the way he went down. A whole neighborhood came
Oh,
against
I do
him,
too.
whooped his behind. He had it coming.
Yep.
But born Born Ricardo Leyva Munoz Ramirez on February 29th, 1960, in El Paso, Texas. The fifth child of a Mexican immigrants, Mercedes and Julian Ramirez, most infamously known as the Night Stalker, American serial killer, rapist, kidnapper, child molester, and burglar. He was convicted of 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries, putting him on death row. He died on June 7th, 2013, aged 53, due to health complications at Marine General Hospital in Green Bay, California. Ramirez shares his childhood. Considered an influence on Ramirez's childhood is considered a big influence on his crimes. Abused by his father, Ramirez
Mm.
began developing gruesome, macabre interests in his early and mid-teens from his older cousin Miguel,
Mm-hmm.
Mike Ramirez, who also taught Ramirez some of his military skills that he would go on to use during his year-long killing spree. He also cultivated a strong interest in Satanism and the occult. By the time Ramirez had left his home in Texas and moved to California at age 22, he had begun frequently using cocaine, would often commit burglaries
Mm.
to support his particular drug addiction, which were later frequently accompanied by murders, attempted
Now,
murders, rapes,
wasn't
assaults.
his cousin in Vietnam?
Yes, when Ramirez was 12,
Yeah.
his cousin Miguel, Mike Ramirez, came back from serving in Vietnam.
Okay.
Upon arrival, Mike became a heavy influence on Richard's behavior. He would tell the
Mm.
boys stories about raping and murdering Vietnamese women for the sake of pure entertainment.
Oh, Lord.
He produced photographs. Mike, his cousin, produced photographs of the acts to show how graphic his escapades were. The final photo presented a rape victim's severed head,
Oh,
held by Miguel
jeez.
himself in his hand, positioned so that the victim's mouth was placed around his male parts.
Oh, Lord.
Um, Sorry about the description, y'all, but
That's disgusting.
the introduction of these pictures awakened something in Richard, and he would frequently
Mm.
look upon them to, relieve himself. So
Oh,
right then and
Lord.
there, just like Bundy, he's mixing the pornographic images with violence, and that's a very consistent theme. I think for
And it's
majority
sexually
of,
arousing him,
and
too.
sometimes in some cases that's the only way they can be aroused
Yeah.
through violence,
Yeah.
which is
Whoa.
very interesting. The glorification
Yeah.
of a sadistic behavior toward a young woman to our young and impressionable Richard Ramirez sparked the catalyst moment for when his mind was corrupted. Eventually, the mere act of looking at violent images would not be enough. So during his teenage years, Ramirez took a position at the local Holiday Inn. It was at this job he began to act on his sexual urges. As an employee, he had access to a master key, which allowed him to enter a woman's room while she was alone. Ramirez then proceeded to attempt to rape her before the woman's husband entered back into the room. He beat Ramirez, and the couple left the hotel. The victim opted not to press charges as she was on vacation.
Oh,
So at
boy.
this point, Richard Ramirez had been working up the courage to fully brutalize someone for sexual pleasure. If he were not caught in the
Oh.
act, he may have been able to follow through with that lady.
He could have. She could have stopped all this.
Um,
Oh, boy.
so while under the influence of his older cousin, Mike, young Richard was taught how to shoot a gun and wield a knife. So
Mm.
Mike had already encroached into the boy's mind with deviancy and sadistic.
Oh, my gosh.
Something which was kept as a secret between the two of them. The training of weaponry ended up becoming the second step to molding what would later on create a killer. When he was 13, he would travel to Los Angeles to visit his older brother, Ruben, who introduced him to prostitution corners and adult stores. Richard would
Oh,
join
boy.
him in committing burglaries. He would be taught how to get through locks, how to open windows, the things to look for: dogs, alarms,
Oh,
motion
my
detectors.
gosh.
Later that year, Ramirez would move in with his older sister Ruth and her husband Roberto, who brought back Richard along on a peeping tom night. So they would have peeping tom nights.
Oh,
Um,
my
so
gosh.
the two would lurk in backyards to watch couples have intercourse or catch a glimpse of a nude woman. Ramirez would find the situation sexually stimulating and continued to practice a voyeurism alone after the two were caught by his disapproved sister. So he got caught. They both got caught his sister and his sister's husband, they kind of did their own thing, but he came back frequently on his own to continue the practice of being a peeping Tom.
Oh my God.
Um, all three of these men ended up having an impact on Ramirez and his social learning in one way or another. Mike would initially introduce Richard to the idea of sexual violence and normalize the concept for the child. His weapons training for Ramirez taught him how to overpower his victims while brutalizing and violating bodies. The art of burglary, taught by his brother Reuben, equipped him with the ability to gain entry into his victim's residence without notice. Through this, he could silently approach unsuspecting individuals and begin a violent assault. Roberto's influence perpetrated Richard's infatuation with deviancy and affirmed the notion of stalking and observing one's prey. This, combined with the knowledge gained from Reuben, would later help him create the identity of the Night Stalker. It's claimed that Ramirez's father was very violent at home. So much so, Ramirez slept in a cemetery to escape his home life.
What?
So I find that very interesting.
Oh my gosh.
Strong connection between violence, death. Basically, that's where the disconnect. He wasn't born like this. He's basically trained to become like this.
Yeah, by
that-
his brother and
By
cousin.
his family, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So his early years are marked by childhood trauma, abuse, and addiction. He also took lots of PCP, but he also suffered from medical conditions. So he had a lot of epileptic seizures.
He
He
did.
did.
Wow.
Yep. In one of his incomplete murders, Ramirez. Listen to this. Ramirez attempted to strangle a girl with a phone cord, but saw sparks emanating from the cord and realized she was still breathing. Immediately, he fled the house, believing that Jesus had intervened to save her. Did he have delusions? Was that a subtle epiphany of guilt? So, in his
Was
religion,
that 8-year-old little girl?
I'm not sure. It could have been. But, he has that view. Jesus came to intervene. What's going on through what's his ideology look like?
Wow.
He believed Satan was his benefactor. Then it would make sense that something symbolic like that was consistent with his belief system, right?
Right.
Ramirez was not insane from either a clinical or a legal perspective in the U.S., which would mean you don't know it was wrong to kill at the time of the crime. Ramirez knew
Yeah.
he knew it was wrong. He
Right.
simply didn't care and had an appetite for killing. He's
Oh, my
a
Lord.
sociopath, is not medically ill according to the American Medical Association.
What? How can they say that?
Well, that's their opinion. But yeah, he definitely has some mental illness going on. But very, very
Yeah.
violent. I think he just had a very dark. He had a dark
Yes.
soul. He had a very dark soul. That's what's going
He
on.
did. Yeah. Well, it didn't help how his family influenced all that crap. Wow.
In that wild. But yeah, he's
That's-
having this very spiritual. Unlike other serial killers, he had no serial killer. You say something sparked or something happened and Jesus intervened. So he had a
Right.
high regard of a sense of spirituality, but obviously it was an idolatry, and Satan was his benefactor.
Right. Right.
So I think honestly
gosh.
he's a very good example of someone who could be influenced by demonic spirits.
And you didn't mention that he actually saw his brother kill his wife.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, when he was 13 years old, they were having a fight, and his brother pulls out a gun, shoots her right in the face, kills her right in front of him.
So he's been numbed to death, and it seems to only be the only thing that excites him.
Stimulates him.
Yeah, stimulate. And so yeah, that's Night Stalker, but I think he's very well known.
And he did drugs. We got that connection again.
Yep.
Okay.
Substance abuse, mental illness, epileptic seizures.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing. So, all right, with that fact, his brain chemistry's off. He's having seizures. You know what I mean? So,
He's obviously not all there. He's easily influenced, and he's growing up this way. He's since age 12. So for 10 years, he's been predisposed to violent behaviors, to sex, to drugs,
oh my gosh.
to weaponry. Not only is he introduced to violence, but how to use tactics on people. So, if anything, he's encouraged and he's trained.
Oh my gosh.
But still, I think evil had an ultimate role in deciding which life he wanted to choose and which force he gave into. So I'd say that's a good example of a demonic spirit entering him. I really think a demonic spirit entering him. Even on during his trials, you know, he would have the pentagram symbols. He
Oh
said
yeah.
that himself. He worshipped Satan. So I mean, if you know, the secular world won't understand that and say, well, he's just a religious nut or whatever he is. But as Christians, we take that very seriously. He had a very strong demonic force upon him.
Well, I just wanted to pull up real quick, and it does say that when psychologists were talking about Ramirez, they considered him a narcissistic psychopath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So again, we're looking into mental illness.
Yeah.
Once again,
And he could have been both. I mean, who's to say that they both can't play a big influence? 50-50. I think he had all the traits of it.
Now, okay, his dad was abusive, but where was his mom? Was she around?
I couldn't find too much about her. I think she abandoned him. She might have abandoned him.
So again, we're looking at a family disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And I find interesting that a lot of these serial killers either had a absent father or an abusive one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the importance of a daddy, oh boy, that definitely impacts a little brain.
We can. That's definitely a video all itself on the social construct of the way today, especially in America, in different different racial groups, even in the white community, with the absentee of a father is detrimental to one's development because they don't know what a healthy, not just having a dad there, but a healthy father, a
good role
model.
A
Christian father would be preferred.
Yeah.
But yeah, to know what a man looks like.
It's not man.
Not a tough brute who wants to fight everybody all the time, yet he protects. A compassionate, loving father who will show you how. He didn't have that. None of these. Well, I mean, Ridgway did have that. Some of them did have that. But it's such a fascinating topic because they're not all the same.
I'm just saying that most of them did not have that. I find that interesting.
Yeah. So Ramirez is definitely very, very evil. I think he was very evil and. Yeah.
Well, I think they're all evil, but
yeah. Well,
okay. But
Okay.
he's particularly disturbing.
Yes,
in my opinion.
he is. If I were to categorize him, he's not like Ridgway had he had the careerist approach. This is who I am, what I do.
Yeah.
If we're talking in those terms, I would say Ramirez is more of a thrill kill. I need it. I don't care how I get it. Because he didn't have a lot of victims.
And
it was a very short stint. He got caught with footprints. He wasn't very careful. He wasn't meticulous about it. He just knew how to break into people, and he would decide when he's in that house who his victim is, if they're going to decide if they're going to live or going to die. So he was a very passionate, in the moment kind of killer, unlike Ridgway, who is a careered, anomaly, really.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between Ramirez and Ridgway.
And although most of them, if not all of them, did have some kind of knowledge of God and good and evil, it seems like Ramirez was the one who literally embraced this demonic.
Yeah.
He liked it.
Yeah. They really thought he was working for Satan. So he definitely was.
He was, yeah.